Hi, my name is Mark Adams, and welcome to the Private Label Report. This is a podcast where I invite you into my office and we talk about all things Amazon private label selling. Pull up a chair. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Private Label Report. My name is Mark Adams. I'll be your host. I want to thank you very, very much for being here, whether you're listening on iTunes or you're watching on YouTube. One of the topics and one of the questions I get quite often is how do I better deal with suppliers? What's the process? What's the magic formula to deal with suppliers? How can I make more money dealing with suppliers? Well, that's a reasonable question, and I'm going to see if I can try and address some of those things. One, obviously there is no magic formula. There's no magic formula, no magic bullet in anything. It's just a matter of a little bit of persistence, a little bit of tenacity, a little bit of style, a little bit of gall, I might add, in going to do that and having the gall to ask for certain things. But let's see if we can just kind of go over some things and see if we can make that part of your business be a little bit easier. As I'm recording this, I just got back from the Canton fair, and I watch people negotiate as they'd walk into the booth. And negotiating face-to-face, I think, is really very similar as if you were negotiating over Skype or if you were negotiating over email through someone you met on Alibaba, wherever that might be. But, I think the process here, and I think a lot of people, let me start out by saying what I don't think you should do, and let's get into what you should do. We all see people on TV negotiating over cars or things like that, and they'll point out, well, there's a dent, there's a scratch. I don't like that. It's not worth it. Let me offer you this. You know, if you think about that, that's really designed for one-shot negotiation where you're really not going to see anybody else again. I'm a big believer here that you're trying to build a relationship, a friendship almost with your suppliers. And I think the last thing you want to do is to start the relationship off with pointing out the flaws and faults and what's going on. I think you can do some of those same things without being antagonistic. If you look at really the Chinese culture, it is one of politeness. When you're coming across and you're saying, well, I don't like your product this, I don't like it's here, it's this, you got to do better on pricing, they really see you almost in our vernacular as a jerk. And really they don't like you. They may tolerate you, but they're not going to do anything special for you down the road. Ultimately, I think when you negotiate, you want to be polite. For those of you who have already tried to negotiate with them, you'll get in the emails, hello, kind sir, and it's all, the language is all flowery. Politeness is part of their culture, and I think you should respond in kind. Now, as you're going and doing this, one of the things that everybody seems to want to be concerned about price, and rightly so. There's no reason you shouldn't. However, I'm one who believes that you want to have a situation where the supplier is making money off you. I've been a manufacturer before, and people come in when they negotiate like that. It's like they see as the manufacturer that you owe them because they're buying that you should be able to accommodate their every wish and their every whim. And then again, as a manufacturer, you're thinking, neophyte, rube, whatever your colloquialism is for just fell off the turnip truck here in the South, whatever it might be, that that's not a very professional person. You want to act and be as professional as you can because you want them to perceive you to be that way. You also want to know what your cost and things are going in, and you want to know what's the lowest price you're going to take to make that viable for you. And then ultimately you want to try and let them ask or mention the first price because it may be cheaper than what you were planning on paying, and then you can still negotiate down from there. But in this, one of the things in doing this, it's simply, there's no magic for me. It's just coming in and getting started. What a lot of people have issue with is the first quantity or the minimum order quantity in the pricing. And I understand that because these suppliers, they're taking a chance on you and they have to make money. Usually in their first order or two, they're not making money until you're a regular, consistent customer. So I always encourage you to put yourself in the manufacturer's shoes and see what it is that they want. One of the things, if you want a smaller quantity in the beginning, that they tend to respond to, and it's the word trial order. We would say sample order here in the West, but their terminology is trial order. You say, well, I'd like to do a trial order of a smaller quantity, and then I'll come back and do bigger orders on reorders. More times than not, they will agree to something like that. And then, too, another thing is if you come in and right off the bat after, if you're negotiating something other than the initial price, you say, okay, I'll pay you more for your initial order because you're really just testing anyway. It really doesn't matter if you make money on your first order. You're trying to get your brand and your product launched and established, and you're trying to do this for the long term. Think, obviously, marathon, not sprint. But if you offer to pay them a higher price in the beginning, which is fair, then you come back and say, well, okay, if I come back in my future orders, I'd like to do a lower price. Or when I get to a certain quantity, I'd like to do lower prices. more times than not, they'll agree to that because, like all people, they're just thinking that initial order and getting it in and getting it going and hoping that you're going to succeed. But if you do that and you're also showing them that you're believing enough in yourself that you're willing to put some money up front, they're going to look at you in a very, very different way, other than somebody who's just trying to get them to accept the lowest possible price. Another thing that you can negotiate when you're dealing with suppliers, it doesn't have to always be price. You want to have obviously a reasonable price where you can make money. But the other thing that you can do is sometimes suppliers, let's just say in this example, it takes them 30 days to make a product. Realistically, it takes them 15 days. What they're doing is they're building in a window to allow for their equipment to break or to have a product shortage or something to happen that inevitably happens in all production. If you accept and agree on a certain price, you say, I know that's a little bit higher price. I'll be glad to pay that. However, your normal delivery period is 30 days or production period is 30 days. Can you do that in 21 days? More times than not, they'll agree to that because that doesn't cost them something, and that's something that they can be flexible on because in their mind, they're still getting it done in 2 weeks, maybe 15, 18 days, whatever it is. And things have to go well. However, that's something they have some flexibility on because it's very, very important to be able to keep your inventory numbers down when you're negotiating. I much would rather have a faster turnaround time so I can make more frequent orders but be able to order less quantity and keep less quantity in inventory. I use that extra money to buy another product or promotion or whatever, and I'll turn those dollars into significantly more. But ultimately, when you're negotiating, I think it comes down to just being courteous, being polite. You want to present yourself as a professional business. When you walk in and say something like, well, I'm just starting an e-commerce business in the United States, and this is my first order. First, what they're hearing is somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, somebody who's going to be difficult to deal with, somebody they're going to have to educate to get going. And most people are not willing to put that time and effort into it because they're thinking your chances of success are not very much. But if you go in and I have a large e-commerce business, I'm looking to add this line to my business, tell me a little bit about your product, and then go on and talk to them when they see you as somebody who is competent and confident in what you're doing, then you're going to be fine. Another thing I think I like too is that a lot of them are hesitant to get on Skype because even though most of them speak English pretty well, they don't think that they do. But one of the things Skype has just introduced, as I'm recording this a week or so ago, 2 weeks or so, is they'll have the translation, the written translation on the page. So if I'm talking in English to the supplier on his page, he'll see Chinese. And if he's speaking Chinese, I'll see the English translation on my page. So it won't be 100% accurate, but it'll be certainly good enough to communicate. So between their broken English, which is still pretty good, and then the translation on the page, communication shouldn't be an issue. So whereas a lot of times people were doing email in the past, you might want to consider doing Skype now if you haven't ever before. But ultimate negotiation is an art. It's not a science. It's not a magic pill. It's not a magic bullet. It's something that you just have to keep asking on price until they get to where you want. And then when you get to the lowest price you get and you feel that's workable, then start asking for some of the other things, whether it be a faster turnaround time, maybe some type of enhancement in the packaging. You have to get creative and just keep going on all fronts until they say no. But regardless of what you're doing, be polite on all things, because if you want this to be a long-term relationship, they need to make some money too, or eventually they'll find a way to stop producing your product and you're back at square one, and that's going to cost you 10 times more money than paying that extra nickel. And obviously, when I say a nickel, that's a euphemism for lowest possible price to where it's only a lose-win scenario. Obviously, you want it to be win-win. And I think if you do that, I think you'll be fine, and I think you'll establish a good relationship that will last for years and years and be mutually beneficial. And you'll find that when you, after a few orders, you tell them you're coming to China, they'll welcome you. They'll invite you to your factory, and it's rewarding for them and their culture to treat you like a king once you're an established customer. So that's something to look forward to. And again, when you get to that point, you know you've done everything well, and you're making money, they're making money. It's a good situation. But just a couple quick overviews on dealing with suppliers that I found in my 25 years. Just realize they're people, treat them that way, and I think you'll be fine. I hope that helps, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Thanks. Bye.